Okay, this is Justin, and looks like you've got the character in a sort of desert kind of cactus scene. It's good to have sort of foreground objects in your shots like you have. The cacti seem a little kind of sliced off at the top. Let's take a look in Maya. Okay, here we are in Maya, and yeah, these are looking a little bit unfinished with the sliced off tops, and they're kind of hollow. Um, I suppose you could kind of continue modeling this. Shift right mouse click, fill hole, and then maybe select this and extrude face and scale that in or something, and then move it up. And then maybe you want to, I don't know, round that out a little bit or something. Control Shift X for multi-cut tool. And then I'll take this edge and scale that out a bit. Maybe add another one. Maybe scale this one down. Whoops. Sure, I get the whole top here. Deselect those. You'd have to fix the UV map and texture on that, but starting to get there. Where it'd have a top on it, because it looks very weird the way they're sliced off on the top. And then in general, I would say, I like that you have a kind of a landscaped hills in the background. You've got, but really it's just, a bunch of cacti and the ground, and it'd be good to have, I don't know, a little bit more to it. Maybe there's a little, decaying building or barn out there, or maybe there's some rocks on the ground, or a path, or some objects like a barrel or a wagon wheel, or I don't know, something. It just seems very, very empty with just cacti, and it doesn't really. I mean, really, you didn't model any props at all. You just did the land, and then used the paint effects cacti and converted it to polygon. So there isn't really any, besides the land itself and pulling up those hills, there's not actually any modeled set at all. So I would say that you could take this further and add some props, add some other, carefully, thoughtfully modeled, objects of some kind. Maybe find some reference images of something you want to build. Maybe kind of think of a story of why this character would be out there. Maybe he just found a well or something like that. Maybe there's a well, and then that could be the main thing. The characters around trying to get water out of a well. I'm just making stuff up off the top of my head, but the point is, this scene is really lacking in much, detail or a lot of effort in creating objects on a set. So I would kind of keep going with that. Also, you should get your outliner organized. There's all kinds of, there's the old strokes from the cacti you probably don't need, although here's one that looks like, did that not get converted to? Oh, it did. Anyway, should be able to delete these out. Well, I guess maybe they still have history on them. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Edit. Delete history. Does that do anything? Should be able to get rid of these. And then, maybe take your cacti and group them and make like a cactus group. Yeah, and you may or may not want to keep that. Maybe make another group with that and this and call it Oh, ground and sky. And call it set. Okay, next up is Pawnee. And here we got a few different images from the set. Um, that could make for a establishing shot, I guess. It's always good to have foreground objects in the shot like that. Let's take a look at the Maya file. Looks like, yeah, you mentioned you downloaded some stuff from the internet. It would have been better if you had modeled this yourself. I mean, really, this a couch would be really simple and quick to model. Just just as a quick example, if I were to take a cube like this, I'm going to do it kind of rough, but I just want to show you kind of how few steps it would take just to have done it yourself. So I did Control Shift X for to get these, the side things and the back, and then take these faces, Shift right mouse click, extrude face, pull those up, and then select the edges that you'd want to round, which is, that you'd want to bevel, which is probably most of them. Whoops. Minus these. I've got mirror on. Something like that, right? And these. Okay. Shift right mouse click, bevel edge. Maybe decrease that a little bit, increase the segments. Something like that. And in a few easy steps, I've got this same couch shape. This is just going to be a cube with some beveled edges, So, and then frankly, this topology is way better than this with all these crazy triangles on it. So, I don't really think that's the kind of thing you need to download. And again, like this TV stand, these things aren't hard to model. You could just do a cube and then maybe extrude in for the face of the screen, and then you've got a couple of cylinders here. So, or maybe you did the cylinder, or you just took a plane on the front, anyways. So I guess my point is, a lot of this stuff you could have just done yourself. A lot of these are just kind of primitives duplicated around. I don't know if you modeled this stuff or not, but guessing since that's all, I don't know. But yeah, most of this stuff it was easy to have done yourself. Obviously, that would be a fair amount of work. It's doable, but it's the kind of thing you could have, if you wanted to do paint effects, you could do that. Find something similar, or just carefully model it. It's good that you've got some textures on here. I think the outdoor stuff isn't working right now, that image, because it's really stretched out. Looks like you have like a 3D texture placement node, and it's everything's elongated, so seems like it should be more like that. But then the other thing is it's a little bit off because since those are in the distance, they should be smaller, maybe more like that. But now we're seeing the repeating image, so I would just say basically you need a different image if you're going to do that kind of outdoor window with these big kind of windows. That requires a lot of background to fill in. So if you're going to have that, you'll need more, like a more of an image to use, an image that covers more area than that kind of small snapshot of the backyard. And just scaling it up doesn't really work because then it just looks distorted and too large. So yeah, I mean, in summary, yeah, it would have been better if you just modeled your own stuff rather than importing them. It's good that you got something assembled together. Seems like the couches are missing any kind of texture. It's just this Fong, and Fong is just a, yeah, with no texture, color map to it. Although there is a bump map. So yeah, I think you could touch this up, at the very least do something with that background, maybe get some color on the couches. You could also add other little details here and there if you want, maybe some light fixtures or kind of other objects to make it look more lived in. Okay, this is Alena, and looks like you've got it. Yeah, it's a building. Looks like maybe it's the same one, duplicated a few times or scaled. Not sure. I don't know what this frame is supposed to be, a window. If that's a window, I would then cut out a hole in this. So you've got a ground texture, but right now that's looking very stretched out to me. And then the buildings don't have a texture on them. So let's take a look at the Maya file. First thing I noticed when opening this Maya file is it looks like you're not working within a Maya directory because what you should have is a project folder, and inside the project folder you should have a scenes directory, and your scenes file should be in the scenes directory, and any images should be in the source images directory. So to make a project, you can do file, project window, and then make a new project, and then give it a name and browse to the directory you want to put it in, and then it'll create all these subdirectories. For example, scenes, where you put your scenes file, and source images, where you put your texture images, and you need to organize your scene that way. You can't just make up your own folders and put stuff anywhere. This texture is looking really stretched out for the, when you compare this set. Like, I imagine this tile to be maybe like 1 foot square rather than, whatever, 20 feet square. So what you could do is go to the place 2D texture node. Here, I can get it, and I can try increasing the repeat. Let's try, I don't know, 12 by 12. So I think, you see that it repeats a lot, but, in a shot like this, you're maybe getting away with it. It's a little bit repetitive, but the way you had it scaled up was way too big. This texture, on the other hand, what's going on with this one? Color. So this is just a procedural rock texture, and to me that's looking a little kind of weird. It doesn't match the kind of photographic nature of this one. So I would try to get photo textures on there or painted textures on there. And then this one doesn't have a texture, and then again this one, is that another procedural thing? Yeah, I mean the procedural things aren't so great, so I would get some textured images to put on there. You can find stuff for free on cgtextures.com, or take your own photos and map them on there. So I think this is a start. I think it's at least a physical space you can work in. It lacks detail. There's no actual props. There's just kind of a few buildings on the ground, and I'm not really sure if that's supposed to be a window. Then you need to, you might want to cut a hole in the building. Like you could use the multi-cut tool, Control Shift X, and put in the kind of the necessary lines here, and then you could take these faces, for example. it's just hard to tell because of color. And now at least there's kind of a hole where the window is, or maybe you want to put, replace those faces with glass texture or something like that. So, anyways, photo textures, adding some props, getting more detail in the building. Maybe look at some reference images and see, look at little vent holes or doorways, framing. You should just look at photo reference to give you some ideas of the details you could have that would bring this to life. Because right now the objects are looking very primitive and simple. It's not much more than sort of a default cube at this point, and it lacks detail. So I would keep going and flesh out the set a little bit more. This is Jersey. Yeah, this is looking good so far. I think it's smart to have situations where you can repeat objects like these columns or those lights. Adding things like this, I guess that's like an electrical access box, is kind of a nice detail that gives it a sense of scale. Um, the lighting helps sort of sell it too, but it definitely has kind of a sense of place and drama. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a very usable set. Right now it's looking a little bit empty. I think you've got a few things in there, the garbage can, the columns, the doors, and the lights on the ceiling, but maybe think of other objects that would be in there, maybe just some discarded, rubbish, a crushed cup or cans or, I don't know, something just to make it not feel quite so empty and pristinely clean. So the first thing I noticed when I opened the file is it looks like you're not using Maya project folder for this. So you should be putting your scene files in the scenes directory and your source images file in the source images directory of a Maya project folder. So file project window, and then you can make a new project and browse to the folder you want to put it in. It'll create all these default directories in there, and you'll want to save your scenes in the scenes directory and your source images in the source images directory. As of right now, I'm not seeing the textures on here because they're not properly linked and they're not in a proper My Project folder. Let's see if we can relink them. Graph, clear graph. So this file, and this is what you get when you don't use a file directory, is it's looking in like, C users, Jersey data. Obviously, I don't have a folder in my computer called C Jersey's, desktop, blah, 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 blah. What it should be looking for is inside the local source images directory rather than looking for something on your desktop, which obviously is not on my computer and therefore wouldn't work. I can browse for it, but then I have to kind of manually relink everything like that, and that's a lot of effort. So it's found the rest of them, so it seems. I think this is okay. I think you might want to do something that's kind of got more dirt on it, maybe a layered texture or something, just to kind of vary this a little bit. This one, the scale looks a little off to me, maybe, and I'm sort of not necessarily buying a big marble wall for this kind of interior of what looks like a subway station. So I might try something else, sort of a plaster or bricks or something like that. But yeah, like a giant marble, certainly here in the tunnel, it's not that believable as the texture for that, so you might try something different. The gravel here is a good choice, and it looks like you've got wood texture here and kind of metal there, so those are all working okay. I think you need some kind of texture for these columns. Do you have anything already? No, it's just the default. So those need some kind of texture as well. But I think the set is modeled well, gives you a lot of room to use. It's the proportions look believable. Like I said, it could use some additional detail, like maybe some debris or trash on the ground or something to kind of bring it to life more. Details like this are good, but maybe there's more things like that. Maybe there's little vents or exposed wire or some kind of emergency phone or fire alarm, or just look at reference to things, see things that you might find in a subway terminal. Okay, next up is Romania, and looks like you've got an outdoor space with buildings in the background, grass, and so forth. The three different shots don't look that different from each other, so you might want to, just explore some more different characters. Wide, medium, close-up could be an example of three shots, or try different angles or compositions, but they're not that different from each other. The ground here is just looking kind of very flat and repetitive there, and this bush behind him doesn't look that convincing. I think, if I was going to do plant life, I would just try to use some paint effects and then convert it to polygons. You're going to probably get better result. And then the bench, though it's good you've modeled the bench, you might want to look at some photo reference for, what a bench more might likely look like. If you're using, photos of buildings in the background, you've sort of established this sort of realistic look, but the bench sort of looks kind of cartoony and odd, and it doesn't look like it's drawn from photo reference. Let's take a look at the another thing I noticed is this building's texture didn't come in, and the reason it didn't come in, if you look at the path here, is because it's on your desktop. So you need to put your images for your textures in the source images directory of the project that you're working in, the Maya project folder. I think, these things like the bench and these tiles, and it's easy to find some concrete texture from cgtextures.com and just map that on there, and maybe you could add at least some tufts of paint effects grass to kind of just flesh this out, so it's not this just endless flat expanse of a repeating texture. Maybe the surface changes a little bit as well, so it's not completely flat. And there's just kind of very little really modeled in here. I mean, there's this big bush, but that's not much of a model, a really simple bench, and then these are just cubes. So I think you could have put more time in actually modeling a set rather than just a few simple shapes and a backdrop. So it's a start, it's an idea for setting, but I think just kind of more time and effort put into the various props and set pieces.